Please, help us save this company.
3 years ago, you replaced experience with favoritism. Tell me, why should I save the company that never believed in me?
For 3 years, everyone believed one hardworking single dad had earned the promotion. His sales records were unmatched, his team trusted him, and even senior managers expected his name to be announced. But the CEO had already made another choice. Before the meeting ended, one quiet decision changed everything. And 3 years later, the company would desperately wish it hadn't. Daniel Carter's alarm rang every morning at 5:30, long before the rest of the city came alive. By 6, he was already in the kitchen packing a lunch for his 9-year-old daughter, Lily. While pancakes browned in the pan, he checked his work emails, making sure there were no overnight problems waiting for him at the office. Life hadn't been easy since his wife passed away 4 years earlier. Every school run, doctor's appointment, and parent-teacher conference rested on his shoulders. Even so, Daniel refused to let personal struggles become excuses. He promised himself that when Lily looked at him, she would see someone who never gave up. At the company, Daniel had built a reputation that couldn't be ignored. For 3 consecutive years, he finished as the highest-performing employee in the sales division. His numbers spoke for themselves, but they weren't the reason people respected him. He stayed late to help new hires understand the business, shared valuable clients instead of keeping them for himself, and stepped in whenever another department fell behind. If someone needed help, Daniel was usually the first person to offer it. His co-workers often joked that the office would stop functioning if Daniel ever took a vacation. There was truth behind the laughter. He knew the company's biggest clients by name, remembered their preferences, and solved problems before they reached senior management. Customers frequently requested to work with him because they trusted his honesty more than flashy promises. Despite his success, Daniel never acted like he was above anyone else. He treated the receptionist with the same respect he showed company executives. He celebrated his teammates' achievements and accepted criticism without making excuses. That quiet professionalism earned something far more valuable than awards. It earned genuine loyalty. As promotion season approached, almost everyone believed the decision had already been made. After years of consistent results, steady leadership, and unwavering integrity, Daniel seemed like the obvious choice. No one in the office imagined that the announcement waiting just around the corner would leave the room in stunned silence. Promotion week changed the atmosphere across the office. Conversations stopped whenever a manager walked by, and everyone had the same prediction. Daniel's name would finally be announced. After 3 years of delivering the best results in the company, it seemed impossible to imagine anyone else getting the role. But there was something Daniel didn't know. Months before the interviews even began, the CEO had quietly started bringing his daughter, Emily, into executive meetings. She had recently joined the company after finishing business school. While she was friendly and eager to learn, she had less than a year of real experience. Most employees assumed she was simply being introduced to the business. Few realized she was already being prepared for management. As the promotion process moved forward, small details began to stand out. Daniel's interview was shortened without explanation. His performance review, usually completed weeks in advance, remained unfinished until the last minute. Projects he had led successfully were suddenly described as team achievements instead of individual accomplishments. His co-workers noticed it too. "This doesn't feel right," one colleague whispered after leaving a meeting. Another manager privately admitted the decision may already have been made. Still, Daniel refused to believe the company would ignore years of proven performance. He trusted that facts would matter more than family connections. The announcement came during the monthly staff meeting. The CEO stepped onto the stage, thanked everyone for another successful quarter, then smiled proudly as he introduced the company's new operations manager, "My daughter, Emily." For a moment, the room was completely silent. Several employees exchanged stunned glances. Others lowered their heads, unable to hide their disappointment. No one questioned Emily's character, but everyone understood she hadn't earned the position Daniel had spent years working toward. A few co-workers expected Daniel to argue or demand an explanation. Instead, he quietly applauded with everyone else. The following morning, an envelope appeared on the HR director's desk. Inside was Daniel Carter's resignation letter. Only then did the company begin to realize what they had just lost. Daniel's desk was cleared before the end of the week. There was no farewell party, no speech from management, and no attempt to convince him to stay. HR thanked him for his years of service, collected his access card, and wished him the best. As he walked through the office one last time, several co-workers stood up to shake his hand. A few looked embarrassed. Others simply couldn't believe the company had let its best employee leave without a fight. Emily officially stepped into her new role the following Monday. At first, everything appeared normal. The CEO proudly introduced her to key clients, assuring them the transition would be seamless. On paper, the company hadn't lost anything. They still had the same staff, the same products, and the same customer list. But what couldn't be replaced was Daniel's experience. Within a few weeks, small problems began surfacing. A longtime client complained that emails were going unanswered. Another customer cancelled a meeting after receiving conflicting information from two different departments. Several sales representatives started arguing over accounts because no one knew how Daniel had managed the team's workload. He had never written down every solution because he had always been there to solve the problems himself. Emily worked long hours trying to keep everything together. She wasn't lazy, and she genuinely wanted to succeed, but she had inherited responsibilities that required years of experience, not months. Every day brought another decision she had never faced before. Soon, the numbers started reflecting the confusion. Quarterly sales dropped for the first time in years. The finance department noticed that several major clients had reduced their orders. Customer satisfaction scores slipped lower each month. The pressure inside the office grew heavier, and the confident atmosphere that once filled the building slowly disappeared. Employees who had stayed because they trusted Daniel began exploring other opportunities. One senior account manager accepted an offer from a competitor. Another experienced supervisor retired earlier than planned. Each resignation placed more pressure on the people who remained. During one management meeting, Emily admitted something she had been afraid to say out loud. "I don't know why these clients are leaving." The room stayed silent. Finally, the sales director answered carefully. They weren't buying from the company. Emily looked confused. They were buying because they trusted Daniel. Those words lingered in the room long after the meeting ended. The CEO refused to accept that one employee could make such a difference. He ordered aggressive marketing campaigns, hired expensive consultants, and demanded faster results from every department. Millions of dollars were spent trying to fix problems that had never existed while Daniel was there. Nothing worked. Instead, frustration spread through every floor of the building. Employees became afraid of making mistakes. Managers blamed one another for missed targets. Meetings lasted longer while productivity kept falling. Even clients who remained loyal started questioning whether the company could still deliver the level of service they once expected. Late one evening, the CEO walked past Daniel's old office. It had remained empty ever since his resignation. For the first time, he quietly wondered whether promoting his daughter had been the most expensive decision of his career. 3 years passed. The company that had once celebrated record-breaking sales was no longer the industry leader. Its name still carried weight, but the confidence was gone. Several longtime clients had moved to competitors, employee turnover remained high, and every quarterly report seemed to bring another round of disappointing numbers. Inside the executive offices, the atmosphere had changed completely. The CEO looked older than he had just a few years earlier. Meetings that once focused on growth now centered on cost-cutting, client retention, and explaining missed targets to the board of directors. Emily was still working at the company, but the excitement she had felt on her first day as manager had long since disappeared. She had gained experience through difficult lessons, yet she often wondered how different things might have been if the promotion had happened another way. Meanwhile, Daniel Carter had quietly built a new life. After leaving the company, he didn't rush into another corporate job. Instead, he accepted a position with a smaller logistics and sales firm that was struggling to compete against larger businesses. The owners weren't interested in impressive resumes or office politics. They simply wanted someone who knew how to build relationships and lead people with integrity. Daniel fit in immediately. He spent months learning every part of the business, from customer service to supply chain operations. Rather than chasing quick profits, he focused on earning trust. He met clients face to face, listened to their concerns, and made sure every promise was kept. Slowly, those efforts began paying off. Within 2 years, the company doubled its revenue. By the 3rd year, it had expanded into 3 new states and opened another regional office. Daniel was promoted to Chief Operating Officer, not because he asked for the title, but because the board believed he had already been doing the job. The promotion felt different this time. There were no whispers in the hallway, no questions about favoritism. The decision had been unanimous. That evening, Daniel arrived home carrying nothing more than a small cake. Lily, now 12 years old, opened the front door before he could reach for his keys. "Did you get it?" she asked with a hopeful smile. Daniel nodded. "I did." She wrapped her arms around him without saying another word. To Daniel, that hug meant more than any corner office ever could. As they sat together eating cake at the kitchen table, Lily looked at him and smiled. "I'm proud of you, Dad," Daniel smiled back. "I've always had the best reason to keep going." The next morning, business magazines published an article about the fastest-growing companies in the region. On the front page was a photograph of Daniel standing in front of his new headquarters. Across town, someone else was staring at that same magazine. The CEO slowly lowered it onto his desk. For the first time in 3 years, he realized the man he had considered replaceable had become the competitor his company could no longer ignore. 3 years after Daniel walked away, the gap between his new company and his former employer had become impossible to ignore. His business had earned a reputation for honesty, reliability, and exceptional customer service. Industry conferences invited Daniel to speak about leadership. Business magazines praised the company's steady growth. More importantly, clients trusted him, and that trust continued bringing in new opportunities. One Monday morning, Daniel was reviewing quarterly reports when his assistant knocked on the office door. "There's someone here asking to see you. Do they have an appointment?" She hesitated. "Number. But I think you'll want to meet them." A few moments later, the conference room door opened. Daniel looked up from the table. Standing in front of him were two familiar faces, the CEO and Emily. Neither of them looked the way he remembered. The confidence that once filled every room had been replaced by exhaustion. The CEO's hair had turned almost completely grey, and Emily looked as though she hadn't slept properly in weeks. For several seconds, no one spoke. Finally, the CEO broke the silence. "Thank you for agreeing to meet us." Daniel simply nodded and invited them to sit. After a long pause, Emily quietly slid a folder across the table. Inside were financial reports, cancelled contracts, and a list of clients preparing to leave the company. Daniel closed the folder without saying a word. The CEO leaned forward. "We're losing our biggest accounts." Daniel remained calm. "I'm sorry to hear that." The older man lowered his eyes. "We've tried everything, new executives, outside consultants, restructuring, nothing has worked." Emily took a slow breath before speaking. "I used to think I earned that promotion." Her voice almost cracked. "Now I know I was given a position I wasn't ready for." Daniel looked at her without anger. She continued, "I spent 3 years trying to prove everyone wrong. Instead, I proved they were right." The room fell silent again. Then came the words Daniel never expected to hear. The CEO looked directly at him. "I made the biggest mistake of my career." He didn't try to defend himself. "I confused loyalty to my family with what was best for the company." Daniel listened quietly. The CEO continued, "Our largest client is ending a 20-year partnership unless someone they trust takes over the account." Daniel already knew the client's name before opening the folder. He had built that relationship himself years earlier. "They asked for you," the CEO admitted. "They said they would only reconsider if you were involved." Emily looked across the table. "We're not here to ask for forgiveness." She swallowed hard. "We're here because we need your help." Daniel leaned back in his chair and folded his hands. 3 years earlier, he had left that company carrying a cardboard box with his personal belongings. Now the same people who believed he was replaceable had crossed the city to ask him to save the business. He looked out the window for a moment before turning back toward them. Then he asked one quiet question. "If I agree to help, are you prepared to hear what the company truly needs to change?" Neither the CEO nor Emily answered immediately, but the look on their faces told Daniel everything he needed to know. For the first time in years, they were finally ready to listen. The room remained silent. The CEO and Emily waited for Daniel's answer, knowing they no longer had the advantage. 3 years earlier, they had held all the power. Now they had come to him because they had run out of options. Daniel finally spoke. "I'll help." Relief washed across both of their faces. Then he continued, "But not in the way you're expecting." The CEO frowned slightly. "I'm not coming back as your employee." Daniel slid the folder back across the table. "I've spent the last 3 years building a company where people are promoted because they earn it, not because of their last name. I'm not walking away from that." The CEO nodded quietly. "I understand." Daniel leaned forward. "If I agree to help save your largest client, it will be as an independent consultant. My company stays independent. My team answers to me. And before we sign anything, I want one promise." "What is it?" the CEO asked. "No employee will ever lose an opportunity because of favoritism again." The words hung in the air. Emily looked at her father before speaking. "He's right." She took a deep breath. "I accepted that promotion because I wanted to make you proud. I never stopped to ask whether someone else had earned it more." She turned toward Daniel. "I can't change what happened, but I can make sure it never happens again." For the first time since the meeting began, Daniel smiled. "That's a good place to start." Over the following weeks, Daniel and his team worked alongside the struggling company. Instead of pointing fingers, they focused on rebuilding trust. Daniel met personally with the client who had planned to leave. He didn't make unrealistic promises. He admitted the company had made mistakes, explained the changes being introduced, and outlined a practical plan to improve communication and service. The client listened carefully. A week later, they signed a new 5-year agreement. It was the biggest contract the company had secured in years. But Daniel's work didn't end there. He recommended transparent promotion policies, leadership training, and independent hiring panels to ensure every employee had an equal chance to grow. Managers were required to evaluate performance using measurable results rather than personal relationships. The board approved every recommendation. Several months later, the company began recovering. Employees who had once feared speaking honestly started sharing ideas again. Customer satisfaction improved, sales slowly climbed, and confidence returned to the workplace. One afternoon, the CEO stood before the entire staff. "I owe all of you an apology," he said. "I believed experience could be replaced by family. I was wrong." He looked toward Daniel. "The best leaders aren't the ones who protect their own position. They're the ones who create opportunities for the people who deserve them." The room erupted into applause. After the meeting, Daniel stepped outside. Lily was waiting by the car after school. "So, did you fix everything?" she asked with a smile. Daniel laughed. "Not everything." He opened the passenger door for her. "But maybe enough to give some good people the chance they always deserved." As they drove home, Daniel glanced in the rearview mirror. 3 years earlier, he had left that building believing he had lost the career he worked so hard to build. Now he understood something far more valuable. Sometimes the greatest promotion isn't the one you receive. It's the life you build after someone underestimates your worth.